Family restaurant blocked during Gran Torino shoot. Owner losing business, begging crew to move. They refused. Clint Eastwood found out. Rewrote script overnight. When owner watched Gran Torino premiere 6 months later and saw what Clint put in the movie, she broke down crying in the theater. It was October 2008, and the production of Gran Torino had taken over several blocks in a working-class Detroit neighborhood. The film, which Clint Eastwood was directing and starring in, told the story of a Korean War veteran confronting his own prejudices while befriending his Hmong neighbors. The production needed authentic Detroit locations, real streets, real houses, real neighborhood businesses that captured the economic struggles and cultural diversity of the area. One of those businesses was Maria's Kitchen, a small family restaurant that had been operating on the same corner for 23 years. Maria Kowalski, a second-generation Polish-American, had opened the restaurant in 1985 with money borrowed from her parents. It served traditional Polish cuisine alongside American comfort food. Pierogies, kielbasa, meatloaf, mashed potatoes, the kind of honest, affordable food that working families could count on. The restaurant wasn't fancy. 20 tables, a small kitchen, Maria doing most of the cooking herself with help from her daughter Anna and one part-time cook. But it was profitable enough to pay the bills, support Maria's family, and serve as a neighborhood gathering place. Regulars came in several times a week. Families celebrated birthdays there. After funerals, people gathered at Maria's for comfort, food, and community. Maria had survived the 2008 financial crisis that devastated Detroit. While other restaurants on her block had closed, 3 in the past year alone, Maria's Kitchen stayed open by keeping prices low, portions generous, and quality consistent. Her regulars, many of them auto workers who'd been laid off or retired early, counted on her. Some elderly customers ate there 5 days a week because it was cheaper and more social than cooking at home. Maria knew their names, their grandchildren's names, their favorite tables. The restaurant's parking lot was small, maybe 10 spaces, but it was street level, directly accessible from the main road, and it was the only reason many customers could visit. Most of Maria's clientele were elderly folks from the neighborhood who couldn't walk far, working people grabbing lunch between shifts, and families with young children who needed the convenience of parking right at the door. When the Gran Torino production came to the neighborhood, Maria was initially excited. A major Hollywood film directed by Clint Eastwood being shot right in her area. It seemed like it could be good for business. Maybe crew members would eat at her restaurant. Maybe the neighborhood would get some positive attention. The location manager approached Maria about filming some exterior street scenes near her restaurant. They wouldn't need to use her building, just the street in front of it. Maria agreed, happy to support a production that was bringing attention to her neighborhood. What Maria didn't understand was that filming near her restaurant meant the production would need to control the entire block, including her parking lot, for multiple days. On the first day of filming, Maria arrived at 5 a.m. to prep for the breakfast rush. There were already production trucks parked in her lot. All 10 spaces filled with equipment trucks, crew vehicles, and a large generator truck that was running to power the film equipment. Maria found the crew supervisor, a man in his 30s, with a clipboard and a headset coordinating the setup. "Excuse me, those are customer parking spaces. My restaurant opens at 6 a.m. People need to be able to park." The supervisor barely looked up from his clipboard. "We've got the block permitted for filming through Wednesday. Your lot is part of the permitted area." "Through Wednesday? That's 3 days. I can't have my parking lot blocked for 3 days." "Ma'am, we have permits from the city. Your lot is in the permitted zone. We need it for equipment staging." "But my customers, they're mostly elderly people, families with kids. They can't walk from blocks away. If they can't park here, they can't come to my restaurant." The supervisor's tone shifted to barely concealed impatience. "I'm sorry about the inconvenience, but we're on a tight shooting schedule. The permits are valid. You'll need to take it up with the city if you have a problem." Maria felt panic rising. 3 days without customer parking meant 3 days of almost no business. She ran the numbers in her head. Her typical daily revenue was around $1,500. 3 days would be $4,500 in lost income. She operated on thin margins. Rent was $2,800 a month, plus utilities, food costs, payroll for Anna and the part-time cook. She couldn't absorb a $4,500 loss. Please, Maria said, hearing the desperation in her own voice and hating it. I'm asking you, person to person. I run a small business. I can't survive 3 days with no customers. Can you please move just a few of the trucks? Leave me 4 or 5 spaces. Ma'am, I understand you're frustrated, but I have a job to do. These trucks are positioned exactly where they need to be for our equipment logistics. I can't move them. Then can you at least tell me when during the day you won't need all the spaces? Maybe during lunch rush you could. We need the spaces all day. We're filming multiple scenes over 3 days. I can't keep moving trucks around to accommodate your schedule. Maria felt tears starting but fought them back. This will ruin me. 3 days, please. The supervisor's expression didn't change. I'm sorry, but my responsibility is to this production, not to local businesses. You'll need to make do. Maria tried one more approach. I've been here 23 years. I survived the recession. I kept my employees when other places were laying people off. This restaurant feeds people who can't afford anywhere else. Doesn't that matter? The supervisor finally looked directly at her, but his expression held no sympathy. Look, I get it, but I have 80 crew members counting on me to keep this production on schedule. I can't solve your problem. That's just reality. Maria opened a restaurant that morning, knowing almost no one would come. She was right. The few customers who tried to visit took one look at the blocked parking lot, filled with film trucks and crew members, actively waving them away from the area, and they left. By lunchtime, Maria had served exactly 4 customers, all walk-ins from the immediate neighborhood. 4 customers when she normally served 60 during the lunch rush. She called her landlord to explain that this month's rent might be late. She called Anna and told her not to come in for her shift. There was no point paying her when there were no customers. She stood in her empty restaurant looking at tables that should have been full and cried. On the second day, Maria made a sign. She wrote it in marker on a piece of cardboard and taped it to her front window. Closed. Film crew blocking parking for 3 days. Can't afford to stay open without customers. Sorry to our regulars. We'll reopen when we can. She locked the door and went home. There was no point staying open with no parking and no customers. What Maria didn't know was that Clint Eastwood drove past her restaurant that afternoon on his way from one filming location to another, and he saw the sign. Clint had been in the film business for over 50 years. He'd seen how productions could impact local communities, usually positively with jobs and economic activity, but sometimes negatively when production needs conflicted with local businesses. He'd always tried to be respectful, to minimize disruption, to make sure his crews treated locals well. He read Maria's sign from his car. Closed. Film crew blocking parking for 3 days. He parked his car, got out, and walked to the restaurant. The sign also had Maria's phone number for catering inquiries. Clint wrote it down. That evening, Clint called Maria. Is this Maria? Maria's Kitchen? Yes, this is Maria. This is Clint Eastwood. I'm directing the film that's shooting in your neighborhood. Maria was silent for a moment, certain this was a prank. Is this really me? Yes, I saw your sign. I want to hear what happened. Tell me everything. Maria, still half convinced this was someone's idea of a cruel joke, explained the blocked parking lot, the 3 days of lost business, the crew supervisor who refused to help, the $4,500 she'd lose, the rent she couldn't pay, the possibility that she might have to close permanently because 3 days of lost revenue could spiral into an impossible financial situation. Clint listened without interrupting. When Maria finished, he said, "First, I'm sorry. This shouldn't have happened. Second, I'm going to fix it. Third, I need you to trust me that this is really Clint Eastwood calling and not someone pranking you, because what I'm about to tell you is going to sound too good to be true. Okay, Maria said uncertainly. Tomorrow morning, you're going to receive a check from the production company for $4,500 to cover your lost revenue. That's the immediate fix. Mr. Eastwood, I'm not done. You'll also receive a check from me personally for 3 months of your rent. Consider it an apology for the disruption and a guarantee that you won't face financial stress from this situation. Maria was crying now. Why would you do this? You don't even know me. Because my crew disrupted your business, and that makes it my responsibility to make it right. But there's one more thing. I'm rewriting part of the script tonight. I'm going to add a scene that takes place in a Polish restaurant in the neighborhood, and I'm going to film it in your restaurant. Your restaurant will be in the movie. You'll be paid for the location use, and you'll get screen credit. When this film comes out, people will see Maria's kitchen in Gran Torino. Maria couldn't speak. She was crying too hard. Maria, I need you to do one thing for me. Tomorrow, open your restaurant. Even if you don't have customers because of the parking situation, open it. My entire crew is going to eat lunch and dinner at your place for the next 3 days. I'm making it mandatory. Everyone working on this production eats at Maria's kitchen. You'll have more business these 3 days than you normally would. I can't believe this is happening. Believe it. Open tomorrow. Watch for the checks and get ready to be in a movie. The conversation lasted 23 minutes. Clint asked about her regulars, about what dishes they loved, about how long she'd been in business. He asked about Anna, about whether she wanted to continue in the restaurant business. He asked about the neighborhood, about how the recession had affected her customers. He listened like he had all the time in the world, even though Maria knew he was in the middle of directing a major film. Before hanging up, Clint said something Maria would never forget. You know what I love about this story? You didn't threaten to sue. You didn't call the media. You just put up an honest sign explaining your situation. That's dignity. That's the kind of person I want to help. The next morning, Maria arrived at her restaurant at 5 a.m., still not entirely convinced the phone call had been real. At 6 a.m., a courier arrived with 2 checks. One from the production company for $4,500. One from Clint Eastwood personally for $8,400. 3 months of her rent, exactly as he'd said. At 11:30 a.m., the first wave of crew members arrived for lunch. By noon, every table was full. They kept coming in shifts throughout the day. Maria served more meals that day than any day in her restaurant's history. The crew members were respectful, generous with tips, and genuinely appreciative of the food. On the second day, Clint came in with several crew members. He introduced himself to Maria properly, met her daughter Anna, and ate pierogi while discussing the scene he'd written. It's a moment where Walt, my character, goes to a neighborhood restaurant for the first time in years. He's been isolating himself, and this is part of his journey back into community. It's a small scene, maybe 3 minutes, but it's important and it needs to be authentic. Your restaurant is authentic. 2 weeks later, they filmed the scene. Clint in character as Walt Kowalski, sitting in Maria's kitchen, being served by Anna, who had a small speaking role, surrounded by the real tables, real decor, real atmosphere of Maria's 23-year-old restaurant. Maria closed for 1 day for filming. She was paid $5,000 for the location use, plus residuals. Her restaurant's name appeared in the credits. 6 months later, December 2008, Gran Torino premiered. Maria and Anna went to the theater in Detroit for the premiere screening. When the scene in Maria's kitchen appeared on screen, Clint Eastwood sitting at one of her tables, the camera panning across her restaurant's interior, her daughter Anna serving him food, Maria broke down crying in the theater. It wasn't just that her restaurant was in a major film, it was what the scene represented. In a movie about prejudice, isolation, and community, Clint had chosen her restaurant, a real immigrant family business, to represent the kind of authentic neighborhood place that connects people. The audience around Maria noticed her crying. A woman sitting next to her whispered, "Are you okay?" Maria, unable to speak, just pointed at the screen. Anna, sitting on her other side, explained, "That's our restaurant. That's my mom's place. We're watching our life on screen." The woman's eyes widened. "That's your restaurant? Oh my God, that's incredible." By the time the credits rolled and Maria's kitchen appeared on screen, half the theater knew they were sitting near the actual owner. People approached Maria afterward, congratulating her, asking where the restaurant was located, promising to visit. After Gran Torino was released, Maria's kitchen became a tourist destination. Fans of the film would visit Detroit specifically to eat at the restaurant from Gran Torino. Maria had to hire 2 additional staff members to handle the increased business. She was featured in local news stories, food blogs, and Detroit tourism guides. The restaurant's revenue increased by 40% in the year following the film's release. Maria was able to buy the building she'd been renting, securing her business's future permanently. But more than the business success, Maria treasured what Clint had done on a human level. He'd seen her sign, understood her crisis, and responded not just with minimum compensation, but with generosity that transformed her situation entirely. Years later, when reporters asked Maria about Clint Eastwood, she'd tell them the whole story. He didn't have to do any of it. The production had permits. Legally, they were in the right, but he chose to see the human impact, not just the legal permission. He turned what could have been the end of my restaurant into the beginning of its best years. That's the kind of man he is. Maria kept Clint's personal check, uncashed, framed on the wall of her office. Next to it was a photo from the premiere and a still from the movie showing her restaurant, and she kept a handwritten note Clint had sent her after filming. "Maria, thank you for your patience, your hospitality, and for letting us be part of your story. Your restaurant represents the kind of authentic community space that makes neighborhoods work. I'm honored that it's now part of this film. Clint." If this story of a blocked parking lot becoming a movie scene, of a 3-day crisis transformed into a permanent legacy, and of how one director chose to see the human cost of production logistics and respond with both compensation and creative inclusion moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. Share this with small business owners, film industry workers, or anyone who's seen their livelihood disrupted by forces beyond their control. Have you experienced someone turning a crisis into an opportunity? Share your story in the comments and don't forget to ring